Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joshua Carroll.
And I'm Holt Short. Welcome to What's Bruin.
Coach Kelley, thanks for joining us once again.
Glad to be here.
Had an outstanding game last week on Thursday against Springdale Har-Ber. It's for the second half of the home and home series that we had with them. You have to be proud of the high score that was in that game. It ended up being 84-68,
Yep.
and was one of the highest scoring football games in Arkansas history. What did you think about that game after that?
You know, I mean, obviously I was glad that we won the game. That's number one. And you know, you look, and I'm glad our offense executed. We've got to fix a few things on defense, obviously, but that's something that was on the coaches. We got some things that we've got to tweak and fit better to our kids. You know, you start off trying to figure out how they're going to be, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and you find that out in your first couple of games, and we're already trying to adjust going into next week, and we'll be better there. But I was really proud of the effort, you know, and people say hats off to Springdale Har-Ber for not giving up when they got behind. They kept fighting and made it a close game throughout the game, but our kids played extremely hard, and I was a little disappointed the week before against Bryant, but against Springdale Har-Ber I couldn't have been more impressed with just our effort on both sides of the ball, on the back side of the ball, 20 yards away from the play, and that is something we can build off of into the season.
Coach, one of the things that at least we noticed after the game, you know, we were just exhausted because, you know, coming to a Bruin football game, well, I'll be honest, a lot of times we invoke that sportsmanship rule. And so we're not used to playing a 4 full quarters of football. At least we weren't.
Yeah.
We weren't used to it. And so we know we were tired after the game. You had to be, these players had to be. Did that have anything to do with the way that they played?
You know, I don't think so. I think, you know, we go into the game, we practice and we run more plays every day in practice than we'll ever run in the game. So that's our way of conditioning. We don't do sprints and all these things that a lot of teams do. We practice our way into shape, and we're always ready for it. You know, and since it's a new year, now if this had been 5th, 6th game and we had invoked the mercy rule, you know, maybe it's a psychological disadvantage if you're used to it and you don't. But early in the year, I don't think that was it at all. I think it was good offensive football being played, and they took advantage of their size, but it was exhausting, no question about it. I mean, we had 1,015 yards of offense, so there was a lot of running up and down the field. So that in itself, and there were 240 plays on our huddle account that we have to review, and normally it's like 160. So there was about 50% more plays than usual in that game, and that in itself is going to lend itself to an exhausting game.
No doubt.
Coach, before the season, you were bragging on this receiver crew. In the game, you had 7 different receivers catch touchdown. Have you ever had that happen before, and were you surprised about that?
It's a good question on the seven different receivers having a touchdown. I bet that is a record for us because you might have some guys score 3 or 4, and and you have to have a lot of touchdowns. Obviously, you have to have 7 to even have that.
Yeah.
And I think Braden threw 9.
Yep.
So I doubt that. But, you know, I was bragging on him because I think across the board, you know, we don't have the one Hunter Henry that people think is the 5-star guy at all. But we've got a bunch of guys across the board where I think our people would say your weakest link didn't very weak in that receiver core, and I think they showed that. We have a rotation that we're playing those guys so they can play 100 miles an hour all the time and never be tired, never think about maybe I should pace myself this play because it's on the backside, and I think that showed off. And with Braden, the way he scrambles around, those guys always have to be ready on the backside of a play, and they were. So that's what I'm most proud of is they're overall, they're just all rock solid, you know, and we don't have to have an all-star to be great, but we just have to have a bunch of guys that are playing hard and are good. And they all caught the ball extremely well, and they ran good routes, and they blocked for each other. I was really proud of that too.
That's one thing I appreciate watching, just getting down the field and taking out any man that's in front of them. You mentioned Braden Bradshaw throwing 9 touchdowns. After the way the last season ended, what did y'all tell him? What did you say to him during the offseason to make sure that, you know, he got back got his confidence back, even if he ever lost it? I don't know if he did, but
I don't think he did. You know, Braden's the kind of kid that you just have to love him as a coach because he wants to please you. He wants to work hard. He wants to learn everything, and he wants to do it the right way. Coming out of last season, you know, I told him, I think I told him the day we lost in the state championship game, is I don't want you to forget this, but I do want you to put it back there and use it every time you're thinking, I'm ready to go home for the day. Throw 5 extra passes. Every time I'm thinking, okay, I don't want to run that extra 40 on top of what you've given us in the off season. Run that extra 40. That's your motivator. And then going in, I told him, and this is the great thing, our offense is extremely complex, and it's way more complex than most college offenses. And what we ask a quarterback to do is tough. Up until Lane Hatcher, I'd never had a quarterback in his first year in the offense, even if he was a senior, win a state championship. The second year, though, they're pretty darn good. It's just tough to grasp. So coming out of last year, I said, look, you made the state championship game. You led us here. Next year's going to be a lot easier for you, and you're going to see. You're going to understand things. Everything's going to slow down, and you're going to realize all the options and the potential. And then we're going to work even better together, and you're going to have a fantastic, fun year. First year is a learning year. We're trying to win, but it's a learning year. And that's what I told him, and I thought he did a great job of wanting to learn more in the off season on top of what he had already learned. And I think you see it all come together in a game like we had the other night.
When you're talking to the players, it's, specifically sophomores, Joe Hyman and Harrison Lane had huge games. What did you tell the sophomores coming into this game? This is their first time under the big lights, if you will, under a bigger crowd. I mean, do you tell them anything, or do you just kind of expect them to be ready to go?
Another good question, because people approach it different ways. I've got to get those guys ready. It's going to be different. It's going to be. I don't do any of that. We go out there and we expect you to play. We play these games in the summer. We play practice. I expect you to go out there and do the same thing all the time, and that is be smart, play really smart, realize what all our options are on the play, and then play really hard when the ball snapped. And so we don't make it any different. You know, I mean, we just try not to put them in the spotlight. We tell them you're always in the spotlight. When you're walking around campus, little kids have you in the spotlight. You know, your teachers are in the spotlight because you represent PA football. When you're out in the community, so it's all the same, you know, and don't make it a bigger deal than what it is. I mean, it is a big deal. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of cameras around. NFL Films was here. We got a group following us around, all that. But we try to have them prepared always. And I'm putting so much pressure on them myself in practice that the game doesn't feel like any more than when they're out there practicing.
Talk about a technical aspect of the game, the 4-minute drive near the end of the game. What was that a bit of a guilty pleasure for you?
What do you mean exactly?
Well, I mean, that's not, you know, last year we saw that formation run with Jaden Kelley, Mason Cobb, and Azarius Woods. Right. And y'all tend to run that at the end of the games when you were trying to run the clock out. But it might have been the Harrison game last year. Y'all ran it a few times near the end. But usually you were running it just to run the clock out and not, it wasn't a 2-possession game as this was. Was that... I mean, was there a little bit of pride, I guess?
Not really. You know, I ran it. I did it for a couple of reasons. If you remember the state championship game last year, I ran it second quarter. Had nothing to do with clock. It was because I thought it would be effective. They're used to spread. Then you come back there and put that in, and it's something that they have gotten out of their minds. It's been out of their focus of practice, and then boom, you're putting that back in. I ran against Harrison simply to get practice for the state championship game. And then I ran it the other night. Did I want to slow it down a little bit? Sure, a little bit. But I'm never thinking pride. I'm never thinking that. I say never. Rarely am I thinking that. But I was thinking we need to get some of this in case we need to do it against Ravenwood, because I know they're a really good football team too. I really, truly, one of the things, I'm not good at much in life. I mean, I'm just really not. I can barely change a light bulb at home. But God gave me the unique ability to think 2 and 3 plays and 2 and 3 games ahead. I'm constantly, if we get up by 14 points in any game, I'm trying to screw up tendencies for the other guy. I'll run things short side, just to screw it, because at the end they'll look at a computer printout. It's like, wow, they run at the same number left as they run it right. They pass the same number left as they do right. They pass the same number to the 3 receiver side as they do the 1 receiver side. And I try to screw up those tendencies and get it back to level. So I'm not good at much, but I'm thinking that, and that's kind of what that was. And I wanted to slow it down, but I can do that with other things. I'll throw bubbles and hitches, which are going to be close to 100% completion percentage. That'll stay in bounds and run the clock too. It's something we'd practice. I want to get on film for us to see what we need to work on, get our guys a feel of it, and see if it's something we thought we could do against Ravenwood.
That seemed to work out well. Let's shift gears to, I guess not next week, but the week after next week. Y'all do have an off week. You're going to be driving, as you said, to Ravenwood, which is in Brentwood, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And do y'all have a routine for these longer road trips that you follow just to keep kids?
We kind of do, and we've got a goofy routine, but we'll get on the bus and then I'll ask them to take some books and study and do some homework on the way, because we got a 6-hour ride or a 7-hour ride. and then we'll of course stop and take breaks. We'll get there, we'll check in the hotel, and our routine is this: you check in the hotel, and then we'll have a quick meeting, and then we'll try to find somewhere to practice, and then we'll go to dinner, go to a movie, go to sleep, get up, have a meeting, eat breakfast, go to a movie. And the reason we go to movies, everybody's like, you just like going to movies. I do love going to movies. But the reason I think it transfers over to the kids is I did some exit interviews a long time ago with some seniors, and I said, what's the worst part of football? I thought they would say August practice because it's 1,000 degrees and it sucks, and I mean, it sucks for everybody, the coaches. And they kept telling me over and over, I kept getting, it's the downtime before a football game, because we start getting nervous and thinking about all the things bad that can happen. So then I've got a couple of friends that I talked to, and I don't even know if they remember, but I talked to Bill Heffley, who's an orthopedic surgeon. I talked to Dr. Clogston, who's a cardiac surgeon. I talked to Dr. Christ, who's a neurosurgeon. And I said, when you guys are about to go in and do surgery, do y'all take some downtime and get your game face on and really review and kind of visualize? And they're like, no, we would think about some of the bad things that would happen, was kind of the consistent answer. We just jump from one case to another because we know what we're supposed to do. And so the movie gets their mind completely off of football. I want them to focus on that movie, completely take themselves out of it, so they don't have to think about it. No, gosh, no. We went and watched Angel Has Fallen last week, which is about the bodyguard of the president, the Secret Service, and that kind of. We've watched everything you can imagine. No, it's not. If there is a football movie out that looks good, we'll go watch it. But no, zero bearing that it's a football movie. I'm just trying to get their mind off things. And oftentimes it's right after we eat. I want their food to digest while they're sitting still, and all that kind of stuff, especially on game day.
And so you watch games, even at home games, you watch movies before.
Yeah, if it falls right, and we've got like our football period last, we'll go watch a movie that day. And do the same thing anytime we're away. We'll go eat dinner, then go watch a movie, so they're digesting food while they're sitting still and getting their mind off of it.
You had said you had acknowledged the truth that Ravenwood is a good team. They've got a lot of big players that are being scouted out from all over the place. What are you looking toward, and what are you preparing for as you approach that game?
We've already got some video on them. They're really good. I mean, I think they've got 5 kids that are committed to SEC schools. They got 2 more that come into mid-major. So you got 7 Division I's. People think of us as something like that, and we will always have one. I mean, we had 1 kid that was Division I last year, and we'll have 1 a year. We average like 1.3 a year, I think, is something the number. And I don't care about. I'm glad we have the reputation for it. People get nervous about that, and that makes them apprehensive about playing. We present the facts to our kids. Hey, they're good. They're big, strong. So you've got to play a little better. We've got to play mistake-free football and those kinds of things. But we really don't game plan around those guys. We don't say we're not going to run this play because he's there. We're going to run that play because he's there. We just play our system. And I was in the quarterback room today, and I'm going, trust the system, guys. Trust the system. It's designed to beat great athletes with lesser athletes. That's what we design it for. It's everything we do in football. So when you're trying to get them there, I love the challenge of playing a great team. I mean, some people have them ranked number 1 overall in the state. I love the challenge of playing a great team, but we're doing it for more of the reason of this. It gets us ready for great teams in the playoffs. We've played great teams, and that's all it's about for us. So, and the kids, in the meantime, if we end up having to go out, and they love bonding together and spending the night together, and they'll remember. They won't remember who scored a touchdown, who did this. They will remember a trip together for the rest of their lives.
That's true.
Last question for me, Coach. Ravenwood's going to have 3 games under their belt before y'all play them, as opposed to the one that Pulaski Academy has played. 4? Wow. I mean, do you see, is that an advantage or disadvantage, or is that just more film tape for you to study?
An advantage for them. I mean, we're going to be a lot better in Game 4 than we are in Game 2. And so, but there's nothing you can do about it. That's one of those things you can only worry about the things you can control. And that's where we're at with that. I wish we were in Game 4 and they were in Game 2, but that's not the case. And we've done that a lot. Our state starts a little later than a lot of states, so we've been in this situation before. It's nothing we hadn't seen before, but it'll tell us where we are, and it'll show us a lot of things, even if we win, and it'll show us a lot of things we've still got to get better at if we want to achieve our goal of winning a state championship.
Outstanding. Coach, thanks very much for joining us once again.
That's all I have.
That's all you've got. Well, folks.
And somehow you kept Josh kind of quiet the whole time.
I know, right? How does that happen?
What's going on? I can't believe more questions.
Those hard-hitting questions, I have to keep them for next week.
Good stuff.
All right. Thanks again for joining us again. If you're interested in sponsoring What's Bruin, be sure to contact me directly. In the meantime, Coach, again, thanks for joining us. And for Holt Short, I'm Joshua Carroll. Thanks again.